I know you've got an ear out for the start of the podcast, but before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to remind you to keep an eye out for Darrell Lee's limited edition Christmas treats, because they're in stores now. Like the iconic Christmas nougat pudding, so yummy and a gorgeous little gift. And some delicious Chrissy-themed twists on your favourite treats, like the Darrell Lee Rockley Road with chewy red and green jelly pieces, green and red crunchy milk chocolate balls, my favourites, and green apple and strawberry flavoured licorice. Watch them disappear. Your Christmas treats table will pop with colour and scrumptiousness. Spread some joy, bring the fun, and enjoy the Christmas tradition that is Darrell Lee. Hurry before they sell out. Darrell Lee makes Christmas better. This is The 5 of My Life with me, Nigel Marsh. The series where I talk to notable people about 5 of their defining things. The way it works is my guests always choose a favourite film, book, song, place and possession. They tell me their choices in advance so I can research them, but they don't tell me why they've chosen them. That's the subject of our conversation. The reason I devised this series is I wanted to create a slightly different way to gain an insight into the real lives and thoughts of prominent people. Matthew Okine is a multi-award-winning stand-up comedian, actor, author and radio presenter. Best known for hosting the Triple J breakfast show in his TV series The Other Guy, Matt plays to sell-out audiences around the world with his ever-popular comedy shows. Mate, what's your favourite 5 of My Life stories so far?
Kate's was incredible. Kate McClelland.
Oh, thank you.
No, seriously, every single thing that Kate said, it just connected with me. I mean, such an incredible story about the loss of her brother and her parents. And, you know, I really loved that, you know, how she sort of reiterated the idea that life is not fair. You know, that just because something bad happens to you doesn't mean that you're suddenly immune for the next, 5 years. It's like the pokies, you know what I mean? Just because a win happens doesn't, or just because a machine hasn't won for a long time doesn't mean it's due for one.
Yeah, that's right. And some awful tragedy doesn't give you a free pass.
No, exactly. So, and that sort of mentality is certainly I've fallen victim to at times in thinking, oh well, certain things have happened to me, so therefore I'm in the clear. Or at the opposite end, you think, oh God, life's been a little bit too good for me for a little while. What's going to happen? Is it going to be my health? Is it going to be money? What's it going to be? So, no, everything resonated with me a lot. So I really appreciated what she had to say. And also just her story and her career is so impressive and interesting, Oh,
I'm so glad you liked that episode. Well, one of my favourite quotes is from Homer Simpson when Bart is sitting on the doorstep and he's had just the worst day. And he goes, Dad, today has been the worst day of my life. And Homer sits down next to him, puts his arm around his shoulder and goes, the worst day of your life so far. It couldn't get worse, Matt. Anyway, we're going to start with your film. And you have chosen Dora and the City of Lost Gold, probably, you vain, vacuous celebrity, because of your scene-stealing 2-second cameo.
Yeah, I am. I play science teacher in the Dora movie, and that is my character's name. It's definitely well known throughout the industry that if your character's name is a job title, you're not going to be high up the credits list, let's put it that way. But I did have one line in it. And do you know why I chose this movie? Because of everything that was happening to me around that film. And it was such just an important time in my life, really. So I was writing the second season of my TV show, The Other Guy. I was writing my debut novel and my partner was pregnant. She was about 3 months pregnant when I was writing it and when I was doing all of that stuff. And, when you're waiting to become a parent, it's that, just waves of emotion and ups and downs and the fear about whether you can actually do it, whether you can be a parent, the excitement, to think that I was so excited by the thought that my daughter might like might watch this movie one day, really soon and see and be a part of it. And there was some really, really beautiful things I took away from the film. One of the things, I don't want to spoil it, but towards the end there is some sort of flash mob style thing, and it's this song in sort of half in Spanish, and I remember learning it in Adelaide on a in my earphones while I was flying from this conference gig I was doing up to the Gold Coast, which is where it was filmed. And after I filmed this scene, it's all this big dancing scene. My partner was like, "So what did you have to do today?" Because it's what the hell does a science teacher do in Dora the Explorer? And I explained, well, there's this big dancing scene, there's a flash mob, I was singing this song, and she said, well, can you sing the song for me? And I said, sure. So I sung the song, and this song became the thing that I would sing to my daughter when she was still in the womb. So every Saturday morning when we'd wake up, and I would sit there and sing this silly song from Dora the Explorer, with terrible Spanish, and we still sing it to her to this day. So she's 7.5 months old, but almost every day we'll sing, whoa, whoa, we came together, that's the real treasure. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Lo hicimos amigos, we'll be best friends forever.
So she's going to be scarred for life.
She's going to see the movie. No, it's going to bring back memories of the womb, But I really hold that time in my life very dearly, and so that's why that movie means so much to me.
How have you found parenthood?
Oh, I mean, I absolutely love it. I'm so in love with this little person that I get to see every day, and it's all those classic things. I've got thousands and thousands and thousands of photos on my phone. I mean, you don't think you can take so many photos of a little person who, with a blurry arm in every shot, and who's barely looking at you, and I just love her so much. And every morning I wake up, in that moment, when you lean over their bed and they look up and smile at you in that sort of like, oh, good, I'm not abandoned kind of way, and playing in bed every morning and stuff, it's just, I don't know, it's opened up a level of love in my heart that I felt was there but didn't have any way to release it, I guess.
No, it's wonderful to hear you talk about that. My kids are old now, but the memories I have of them in those stupid pajamas. It's a stage that you probably don't go to sleep in a Batman pajamas now.
No.
But when you were 2, you might have.
Oh, Ninja Turtles.
That's right. It's
everything.
So cute. and that's your child wearing some stupid princess. It's beautiful.
No, I love it. I mean, I'm sure if I went digging, I'd find my Ninja Turtle socks that I used to go to bed with every night. Absolutely.
Now, we are moving from a children's adventure film to an adult horror story for your second choice. And I have a bone to pick with you, mate.
All right.
Because I do try and do my research properly and read the films and read the books. 1,200 pages, I thank you, for Stephen King's 22nd bloody book, It. Thanks for no thanks.
Well, I mean, I'd be interested to know what you thought of it. Did you like it?
Well, I think you are weird because in it has got a 10-page sex scene where Beverly shags 6 underage boys.
Okay.
And we need to talk, Okine.
Okay. Now, you got to understand, when I was 13 years old reading that book, that blew my mind. I just couldn't believe that there was something like that in the book. Now, you can discuss whether it is appropriate or not, the message it sends. There's so many different layers to that whole scene, right? But when you're coming of age and you're trying to figure everything out, to think that you could have a story that was about people your age who were trying to fight all the evil in the world. And I remember reading that scene. I was like, what? I read it 10 times just sitting there going, what the hell? Is this for real? I couldn't believe it, the way that Stephen King interweaves the different lives and the different backgrounds, and having 6 characters. It's not easy to write something with 6 characters all getting a really good chunk of time together. And he just just think it was such a great example. Also, scary as hell when you're younger. I remember that was one of the videos when you walk past a video store that you wanted to look down in case the cover jumped out and ate you. So that book probably started me on my journey to becoming not necessarily a writer, because that was just a more recent thing as in a book writer, but just a creator of anything, to be able to captivate an audience, to be able to surprise them, to be able to turn a situation on its head. It was really enlightening for me.
So you write, I mean, in lots of the stuff that I've been researching, you write from your life.
Yeah.
Is that somewhere that you go, or are you always going to be talking about Matt?
I ask myself a lot that a lot at the moment, because sometimes you get stuck in a trap where you think, oh God, am I going to run out of things to talk about? And, God, there's times when you're like, oh, please can I please get hit by a car or something? So I've got a good story to talk about.
Get divorced.
For next comedy. Yeah, exactly. So I can talk about, please get some sort of illness so I can have a good comedy show next year. Look, the way that I see that is when you've got perfectly good food in the pantry, why leave the house to get takeaway, So I'm going to use up everything that I have personally and things that are happening in my life, and then I'll look at, extending. It's not that I can't; it's just a different style, and this is what I do at the moment, and I certainly will branch out eventually, because I've still got a 20 or 30 year career ahead of me, at least I hope. So, yeah, it's something that I'm more and more interested in now.
Who are your favourite stand-ups?
So growing up, it was your Eddie Murphys, watching Raw and Delirious, which is inappropriate and politically incorrect as they are now. When you're 12 years old, they were just hilarious. You can't believe people are saying things like that. Then it went to Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle. I think there was a real connection with black comedians at the time as well, being half African and feeling, in Brisbane, Queensland, not necessarily that spoken for in a lot of the media, to suddenly have people who look like you and not necessarily sound like you, but, sort of, I don't know, have the same sense of humor as you and can talk about race and everything like that. That was really exciting. And then someone like Dave Chappelle, who was a real hero, and I got to support him when he came to Sydney and in Adelaide as well, and it was really great. I remember we supported him in Adelaide, and Nazim Hussain is another comedian, gave me a call after the show, and he said, where's the after party? Because Nazim had been on the early show, I was on the later show, and I said, it's at this big R&B super club that Dave's DJ on stage DJs is doing a secret after party thing at. So Nazim said, do you think it's okay if Luke McGregor comes along? Now, Luke McGregor, if you've seen him, is you don't immediately think, oh, R&B super club is where you would, this is your second home, and same with Nazim. Nazim doesn't drink or anything like that. I mean, so we went out and yeah, it was just this amazing party with people, there was bottles of Grey Goose on the bench, and Dave was smoking inside, and people are dancing up around him and stuff. And I remember looking across to Nazim and Luke, we were all just stunned, and I was like, oh my God, this is the club. This is what all the rappers have been talking about. I'm in the club.
I'm on a boat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was such a wild experience to see someone that you really, really have looked up to for so many years, and to be in the same room as him and to hear the stories. He gathered us around on the stage and he talked about, be disruptive, be, talking about things that Muhammad Ali had said and that he'd caught on to, and he was saying, you guys have got to do things that disrupt the status quo and make statements and all that sort of stuff. And then he sent us all a copy of Muhammad Ali's book afterwards as a thank you, which was really, really, it was really, really nice, and it's really humbling when you get to meet your heroes and they are as good as you ever could imagine, because a lot of the time they're not.
Yeah.
They're a great disappointment. But I can't say that about Dave Chappelle.
For your song, we are moving from the 22nd book of Stephen King to the third studio album of my old schoolmates, Radiohead. You have chosen
all right.
the lead single from OK Computer, which is Paranoid Android.
Oh, I mean, aside from the fact that it's one of the most just amazingly written songs, it goes to so many different levels. It's a long song. You don't get long songs anymore, you know, and it really has just so many different layers to it. But this song really sticks to me because, you know, when I was 12 years old, my mum got a headache and she couldn't really go to work and she just stayed at home for probably about 2 weeks. And then one day when I came home from school, she was sort of slumped over in the shower, collapsed in the shower. And she said, "Is your dad still downstairs?" Because my dad had dropped me off at her place. And I said yes. And I ran downstairs and I got Dad, and Dad came up and we carried Mum down in a bed sheet into the car, and then we took her to hospital. And she never left hospital after that and died about 3 weeks later on Good Friday. So on the Easter Saturday, it was the day before my birthday. So she died 2 days before my 13th birthday. And on the Easter Saturday, my stepmom took me to Indooroopilly Shopping Town to get me a birthday present. And I bought OK Computer by Radiohead. And it obviously became a album that I associated with a lot of those memories and did a lot of processing while I listened to that album. So, I mean, that song, aside from being an incredible song, was really important to me at a very impactful time in my life. So, yeah, I always have a very fond spot in my heart for that song.
It was written about an unpleasant experience he had in a bar in LA. Are you aware of that story?
No, I didn't know.
So he was in a bar in Los Angeles, Tom, and there was a bunch of yuppies who were doing coke and drunk, and someone spilled a drink on the woman in the group, and she got really psychotically violent and deranged. And the line in the song, "Kicking, squealing, Gucci little piggy." So it's just a direct response to being in a bar. He felt really physically threatened.
Wow.
And you go, he's just a genius. But I need to ask you a question because it's always interested me about titles. So Radiohead, their first band name was actually On a Friday.
Right.
And the reason it was On a Friday was at school, the only day we could practice music was
on
a Friday. So they were called On a Friday for 4 years before they were Radiohead.
Wow.
Right? And I'm just fascinated at the importance of titles and how you come up with titles. So The Other Guy, well, I could probably imagine how you came up with that one.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of before The Other Guy came out, which was the stand-up show was called The Other Guy.
Yeah.
And it was about, a relationship where there'd been cheating involved, etc.
So weren't you tempted to call it That Fucker?
That'd be too much joy. I think the guy would get too much pleasure out of that. So the stand-up show was called The Other Guy, and when it turned into a TV show, we had a huge argument. This lasted weeks between myself, the other producers, the network, about what we were going to change the name to, because it felt like The Other Guy didn't quite sum up what this news show was about, because the stand-up show was all about the relationship that I had and the lead up to the discovery of infidelity, etc. Whereas the TV show is the aftermath of that. So everyone felt, we've moved on from that sort of situation. This is about rebuilding. What should you call it? And I really, really wanted to call it, and I am always regretful that we didn't get to call it this, but I'm happy with The Other Guy. But I always wanted to call it In Bed on Our Phones, right? Because I think that sums up so much about where relationships are at when they are stagnant, and we've all been there, sitting there with someone that we love, and we're just not saying a word, lying in bed, looking at our phones, tapping away. And it's like, I really wanted to call it that. But too long.
So the other guy... Tell me about the name of your fabulous book.
Well, do you want the writer's answer or the comedian's answer?
I want the truth.
So the truth is, I had 2 jokes at the time when I was writing that stand-up show. So the book is based on a stand-up show called Being Black and Chicken and Shit. It was my very first debut show at Melbourne International Comedy Festival. And when you're writing a show, they ask you to submit the name and the blurb, what's it about 6 months before you've written the damn thing. And I was talking to a friend. And at the time, I had 2 really good jokes. One joke was a joke where I talk about people ask me where I'm from, and then I tell them, and then they act like my answer isn't good enough. And then they ask me again, like I didn't understand their question. So they'll say, "Where are you from?" And I say, "Brisbane." And they go, "Oh, no. Where are you from?" And I go,
"Oh, God, I'm feeling guilty." No, originally, you don't look like Brisbane.
Yeah. And I realised the question they're actually asking is, why are you black, right? And the second joke is a joke about how, and I still do it to this day, it's 15 years old, but I just love doing this joke, is about how I went into a Red Rooster one day and ordered a chicken and chips, and the guy behind the counter goes, quarter chicken and chips, but then stepped away from the register, turned to his left and walked behind into the kitchen and started making a quarter chicken and chips. And I was like watching him, I could see him through the little window, and then he boxed it all up, then he slid it through the front, then suddenly he's like, quarter chicken is ready, and then the same dude came out like nothing had happened, and I was like, what's just happened there, I still say that joke because I really, really enjoy it as a story. But anyway, when I was calling my friend Daniel Towns about what the hell I was going to call my show, he goes, "Well, what do you talk about?" And I said, "I don't know, being black and chicken and shit." And he said, "Just call it that." Like, he laughed. He thought it was a funny name. And I thought it was a funny name as well. So I ended up using it for that show. And that show won the Best Newcomer Award at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. But that show also became a really sort of important show for me about telling the story that I really needed to tell and telling it the way that I needed to tell it. So when I first did that stand-up show, I was struggling because it was my very first stand-up show. I wanted to say something important. I wanted to talk about the fact that my mum had died, but I kept skating around the topic, And I remember Ronnie Cheng was blazing ahead in terms of sales and reviews, and everyone was talking about Ronnie Cheng. And I really, really wanted this to win this Newcomer Award, but by all accounts, it looked like Ronnie was going to win it. And I remember being really bummed out about the whole situation. I was just grinding, And I came home one night and I committed the ultimate sin, and that is to read my own reviews, right? And I read a review that was a 2-star review from The Age. I can't remember who
2 out of 3 or 2 out of 10?
2 out of 5. Okay. And, up until then, I'd always gotten 3.5 stars for the show or whatever. It was a very just, bland response. And I remember reading this review and becoming furious, just absolutely like pulsing with rage at the thought of what this guy had written because he'd basically summed it up. He was like, well, if he's going to talk about this, he needs to either talk about it or stop talking about it. Don't skirt around the edge. Yeah. And I remember sitting on my bed this night. This is just as the last week of Comedy Festival was starting, and I remember thinking, you know what? Fuck you. You want me to talk about it? All right, I'll talk about it. I'll talk about all the shit that I've always been too scared to talk about, the stuff that really hurts me, and the stuff that that sticks in my mind as some of the hardest things to have gone through while I was 12 and watching your mum die. And so I just rewrote the ending of the show. And that happened to be the week that all the judges were starting to see the show. They knew that I had an okay show. They all had to go see everyone. And from that point on, it just like changing it all just took things to the next level.
So he or she did you a favour?
Absolutely, even though I still hate them.
Yeah, but I love that story because you were big enough or angry enough or whatever else to actually take it on board.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important one of the biggest things I learned when I was writing the TV show is, it's a quote that this script doctor gave to us. who was helping us out with the scripts. He said, just remember, 95% of the problems that people identify with your work are correct. 95% of the solutions they give you are incorrect. And that blew my mind as a writer, as a creative, as someone who's constantly battling, opinions of producers and network people and saying, no, this is right. This is, and they're saying, you need to change this. I couldn't figure out what they meant. And now I'm realizing that a lot of people, when they're giving feedback, don't realize that they shouldn't be giving suggestions. They should just be focusing on the problems, So now that I've realized that that's the language that people are speaking in, where when they say a suggestion, they actually mean a problem, then often I'll almost do the exact opposite to what they've suggested, just as a base starting point, to surprise them and to see whether, so they'll say, oh, we just don't know whether the two characters like each other or not. Can they kiss at the end of the scene? And in my head, I'll think, no, I'm going to put them at the two opposite sides of the room in a packed party full of people, and all they can do is stare at each other. That's what, you're going to understand it then, and you're going to get that tension, but you're not going to get what you want, because often you don't want to give people what they want.
But this, I've worked for a number of decades in the creative industry, a different one, and I think that's a miscommunication where what they're saying is, this is my suggestion, and if my suggestion is better than your answer, you're not very good because I'm the producer and you're the comedian.
Because I've thought about it for 10 minutes writing this email.
So beat my suggestion.
That's it.
I love that 95% thing. So I might have spotted something that's right. So could you go away and cleverly sort it out, please?
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly it. And so it absolutely changed the game. So two things happened. I realized that I need to focus on the problem, and I realized that if I'm going to talk about something, I can't sit on the surface. You got to go to that point where you feel uncomfortable, where you make other people feel uncomfortable, where you don't want to, you want to swim back up, but you just got to keep diving deeper and deeper.
Have you read Angela's Ashes?
No, I haven't.
The Frank McCourt book.
I'm aware of it. Yeah.
There's a scene in that where it's an Irish slum, and he's got 11 brothers and sisters, and they live in a one room, and it's flooding and all that stuff. And one of his brothers dies, and he writes, I was pleased because we got the afternoon off school.
Yeah, totally.
And you go, wow. So that's somebody, you would write that sentence and then think, well, I can't put that in because what would people think of me?
Exactly.
And you go, but he did put it in. So I'm telling you 30 years later about, I put the book down and sort of, wow.
100%. And a lot of that happens in my book right now, where my character has to also admit the fact that he, at some point when you're watching a loved one die, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people who have parents who with dementia right now who have been looking after them for 5 years and who are secretly thinking, I just want you to die. And that's a really, really difficult guilt to live with. But that's why I put stuff like that on the page, because it does make me feel uncomfortable and it does make me feel guilty. But it's what happens when you're 12 years old and you're watching someone degrade so badly.
I love the fourth choice of my guests. You've chosen Rainbow Beach, which is in Queensland. Why have you chosen that, Matt?
So I've been going to Rainbow Beach with my dad for as long as I can remember. It's 3 hours north from Brisbane, and my dad started going there when he was a dentist at the Gympie Hospital. In the 80s, he would drive out there and go fishing every single weekend that he could. So he took us as a family as well, and it's just the place that as a family we've always gone, and even in the various different forms that our family has had, whether it's just me and dad, or whether my sister is living back in Australia for a bit and she comes with us, or whether it's, me, dad, and my stepmom, it's always been close to me. We've always gone crabbing. That's what Dad does when he goes.
For someone who doesn't know, could you explain for us, and by us I mean me, what crabbing is? Walking sideways?
All right. Picture yourself knee-deep in mud in the mangroves at the mouth of a river or in a big bay, trudging along holding a bag of cold, wet, stinking mullet heads and another plastic bag full of raw chicken carcasses, and 4 cages that you then tie the head or the chicken into the bottom of the cage, and they're set up so that a crab walks into the cage to eat the chicken, but then can't get out. And so Dad and I have been doing that for so long. I mean, I love doing it because I love doing it with him. You know, I don't think if he wasn't there doing it with me, I would do it, but it's a really great chance to bond with him. And it's the place in the whole world where my dad and I have really gotten to know each other and connect with each other. And it was also the very basis for the stand-up show that I did, Being Black and Chicken and Shit, that it turned into this, that ended up 6 years later turning into a book. You know, the book is all about my mum dying, but the show is all about my dad and my connection with him. I remember we went out at, you know, you got to do it at awful times and the tide's low. And so Dad's like, all right, we got to go out at 2 a.m. to get this thing. I mean, like, who chooses as a hobby to go knee deep in mangroves at 2 a.m. in the morning, right? Out in this creepy, dark, dim swamp. But there he is. And he comes back with a bag full of crabs. And we end up driving home. And in the light, he sees that one of the crabs is female. You can't take female crabs in Queensland. So please don't report him to the feds. Okay, this was a long time ago. Anyway, so when we were in the garage when we get home and turns on the light and stuff, he's expecting them all and he's like, oh no, I've mistaken this one. It's a female. Please don't tell anyone, to me, right? And I'm like, yeah, sure, no worries. Anyways, he puts the crab on the car seat for some reason. I think he was thinking of taking it back or something, but he left the car doors open, right, overnight. Anyway, I wake up in the morning and Dad's car is gone, and I think, oh, he's probably gone to drop this crab back to the swamp. Then I get a knock on the door from this person who runs the apartments, and he goes, mate, did you guys go crabbing last night? And I said, yeah, why? And he goes, oh, just, there's a huge female mud crab just walking down the driveway. And I said, oh, like Dad didn't want anyone to know about this. Certainly not the people who run the apartment. I thought, oh God. So I didn't know what to do. Have you ever seen an angry mud crab? They're not happy. You can't shake a crab's hand. You can't, okay? They're very cranky creatures. And so I end up getting this towel, right, from the bathroom. And I run out, and I've never properly caught a crab before. And I throw the towel on top of the crab and it stops. And I quickly grab it from its back legs. I know you're not supposed to go near the front. And I run back down the driveway as fast as I can. And I run into this garage that we had where there's a big laundry tub. Now, the crab starts wriggling and starts snipping at me. And I can feel my fingers about to go, you know, like I'm terrified it's about to take one off at the knuckle. And so I'm raced back to this laundry tub and I can see it in the distance, and I get about 3 meters away, and this crab starts wriggling, and I think this is it. So I just chuck it, right? I just throw it up in the air at the laundry tub. It flies through the air, and then like a bar of soap in the bathtub, slides down the side of the laundry tub, bottoms out along the bottom of this laundry tub. And I mean, at full speed, goes down, slides across, bashes into this huge male crab, which is loosely tied up, which then, and I swear to God, I didn't know that this sort of physics was possible, the other crab pushes off against this female crab that slid into it, and it propels itself up the side of the laundry tub and out again. In mid-air, the tying ropes that Dad has put on him come loose. It lands in front of me, smashes its claws together and goes, which in crab talk very much felt like, bring it on, motherfucker. Like it was angry, you know what I mean? And yeah, I kicked it. But I'm not proud of doing that. I need you to understand that I freaked out, but I kicked it and its arms popped off. And that's what happens when crabs do that, okay? I know that this is not the right thing to do, but I was genuinely scared. I freaked out. They grow their arms back, all right? Please don't call Peter on me. I freaked out. I ended up getting it back in the tub, but that whole experience ended up being the the driving kind of story for the stand-up show.
Wow.
Which then 6 years later turned into a book.
It's a wonderful story, but a vegan nightmare.
I know. I'm so sorry. There are people. There'll be activists who want
chicken heads.
Who want
Did
my
they
blood.
fall off naturally?
Who want my blood? I'm really sorry, and I am very sensitive to those sort of things. But that is just what had happened, and it was 6 years ago, and I do apologise.
So tell me more about your dad.
Well, he came out to Australia in I think 1972, and he studied dentistry at UQ in Queensland. And, you know, he always tells the story that because I always ask why Australia, and he tells the story that he got a government grant, a scholarship through the Ghanaian government, and his options were to go study in London, the UK, Canada, or Australia. And because of the time that it happened at the end of the year, but all of those other countries start their university terms in June or July, right? And Australia was the only one that was starting in January. And he always talks about, you know, he says, like, when you're a young kid in Ghana and you get the opportunity to go somewhere, you can't afford to wait 6 months to do it because things change and governments change and scholarships disappear and all that. And so he said he was out and went to Australia, and then he had to go back and work there for a few years after the scholarship.
So more specifically, if you don't mind, tell me about after your mum passed away. I mean, obviously for you, traumatizing, but what about for him?
And yeah, that's something that I've thought about more and more, especially writing the book. You know, realizing how much pressure it must have been for him to go through that, to suddenly become a single parent in a proper capacity, not just a single parent in a divorce capacity, but actually being the lone carer. And you know, it wasn't easy for us at the beginning. We fought a lot, just arguments, you know, the way that teenagers do. But when it's just you and him, you can't. There's no escaping it, you know. Just these two guys living in this house together, and one's going through this, you know, big hormonal change, and the other's grappling with the idea of having to be the lone caretaker. We definitely had our ups and downs, but it's all formed, you know, this love now that we have that is unparalleled to anything else I have in my life, and a respect and a real friendship that we got through something pretty big together. And yeah, now I just, you know, love him heaps and really appreciate everything that he's done for me.
So, Matt, for your fifth choice, your possession on Five My Life, we're leaving Australia and we're going all the way to Scotland. You've chosen your Edinburgh Fringe Best Newcomer nomination trophy.
I'm so proud of that trophy. You know, I'd come from a really successful trip and tour of Australia doing comedy, and I went over to Edinburgh for my very first time, and it was hard. It was really, really hard, and I struggled a lot.
Can you explain how vast the Edinburgh Fringe Festival? It's the world's largest arts festival. People in Australia might not understand.
Oh yeah, and I mean, we're in Melbourne Comedy Festival. You've got 400 different comedians vying for, you know, people's sales and attention. In Edinburgh, you've got 4,000 different acts on at any one time, 4,000 different shows, and there is literally a show everywhere. You walk into an elevator and there's someone juggling. You walk into a cafe that can barely sit full of people and there's some Japanese kabuki dancing or whatever. You know, it's just wild how broad it is.
3,500 different shows in 317 venues. It's mind-bending.
No, it is. And you know, anytime you want it, there's a show. Ronnie Cheng and I were staying together and we'd just be like, we want to see some magic. 11 o'clock in the morning, Saturday, sure, there's some magician who was terrible. He stuffed up tricks. Didn't matter. It was 11 o'clock in the morning, we'd do it. But when there's 3,500 different shows and that many performers, if not more, plus so many people coming from around the world, it also becomes an absolute melting pot for just one hell of a super flu that really gave me perspective on how people could die from the flu. Do you know when you hear stories about, I've wiped out whole cultures or whatever, and I'd be like, what, just the flu, just a common cold. Man, I had some days where I really, really struggled with that. But also, then you've gone to a place where no one knows who you are, and you've gone from playing sold-out shows every night to playing 8 people, and you're seeing your friends get 4-star reviews and 5-star reviews, and you're feeling sick every day, and you're handing out flyers to people who are ignoring you, and it's just that smashing back down to earth that makes you really struggle. And I remember I worked so hard on fixing my show, making it better. I couldn't sleep at night just thinking about how I was going to make this show better. And all the work paid off. Gradually, people started coming, word started to spread, judges started coming, and suddenly I got this nomination for a newcomer award. But I remember walking home just thinking, I remember I was at the end of it all. I had a week left to go, and my manager told me, you've just been nominated for Edinburgh. And, I'd been traveling so much, and I had the feeling that my relationship was starting to disintegrate back at home. I was sick. I was tired, and I remember walking home thinking, well, this is what you've always wanted, Matt. You came here, you desperately wanted this award, this nomination, and now you're nominated. You should be happy. And I remember thinking, you know what? If I win this award on Friday when they announce it, this has not made me happy. Everything in your life sucks at the moment, and you thought that this would change everything, and it doesn't. It's just this stupid block, right, of this stupid thing with the words best newcomer, Foster's best newcomer on it. And it was a real turning point in my life, it really changed a lot of things. I was really, really down at that time. But I went home. I didn't win the award. And I went home and I got a call from Triple J right around that time. And they asked me whether I would like to do the breakfast show with them for the next 3 years. And I ummed and ahed about it. I didn't know if I should do it. And I didn't think I would do it, but I decided that I would to, try and fix this relationship that was starting to really suffer and just to stay in one place for once, And so I did it. And the relationship fell apart, and 2 weeks later I found, 2 months later I found out that she'd been cheating on me with my best friend. We'd all been living together for quite a while. I have no idea how long it was going on for, all that sort of stuff. But doing Triple J was the best thing that I've ever done. The other thing I'm going to say about that award is that it's the Foster's Best Newcomer Award.
There is another qualification.
There is. It's the Foster's. Foster's is the brand. And the reason why I love this award so much as well is because of the colour of the award. It's got orange on it, and it's got that really rich blue colour that you associate with Foster's, with the gold trim and the red trim and the blue. And I have an unironic fondness for Foster's. I know people give it shit, but I have very much a fondness for it because in 2004, as the early 2005, I had, it was almost the opposite of the Edinburgh situation. Life was great. It was at the very start of the relationship, 10 years earlier, things were great. Things were going well. I was in love. I was hanging out with my friends. I was about to start the 3rd year of my acting degree. Life was looking amazing. And I ended up getting into this fight when I was out on town in Caxton Street in Brisbane. And it was with this guy who I went to preschool with, who told me, he was mad at me because I didn't let him into a year 12 party like 4 years before or something, right? It was really just one of those things. And I kept saying, no, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sure I would have let you into this party. He said, no, you didn't let me into the party. And he just kept going and going and going. Anyway, eventually we went outside and we ended up getting into a fight. And with this fight, I split the tendon on my pinky finger, fully bone exposed, everything. I remember walking up to some police officers on Caxton Street and saying, can you take me to the hospital? And they said, no, just, whatever, go away. And I showed them my finger and they said, shit, okay, get in the car. And they took me. And Dad would be mortified if he knew I was telling the story. So sorry, Dad. But, that's just life. This is what happens. And anyway, during that summer, I couldn't go swimming with my friends and we all went to the Gold Coast one day. So I decided to go get a couple of Fosters and sit on the beach and watch them all swim while I sat dry with my arm in a cast. But I have such a fond memory of that afternoon, looking at my friends, feeling so grateful for friendships, feeling so in love and excited about this relationship. And I just won this comedy competition. I'd won $1,000. I felt like I was like, oh, my career's on the rise. Like this could be a real thing for me, you know. And I felt so good. So I think part of me remembers that moment as well when I look at that award, and I think back to both the highs and the lows, weirdly, of all of those parts of my life.
It's fascinating listening to you, because two of your pivotal moments have been a bad review and not getting the award. Isn't it? So it's not just the high spots, it's the challenges that knock you on your ass that actually can change your life.
Oh, absolutely. And that's always the case. It's like with stand-up shows, you know, you don't learn anything if you do a good gig. When life's good, you don't learn anything. It's only when it's hard that you start realizing how to make changes and adjust. And so, yeah, those are always the pivotal moments that lead you on a new trajectory. And you can always look back on them and go, I wasn't happy at the time, but I'm glad that happened, even though it was hard.
Last question. Who would you like to hear on Five of My Life next, Matt?
I think Corey White's got a pretty incredible story. He's written a book about it as well. And he's certainly someone who's gone through a lot as a young person, and, you know, had a life that not many people can possibly relate to. So, yeah, I think he'd be someone you might want to talk to.
Well, then we will. Matt Okine, this has been, for me, a total joy. I can't thank you enough for sharing your choices on Five of My Life.
Thanks so much for having me, Nigel. Appreciate it.
The Five of My Life was presented by me, Nigel Marsh. Producer, Alex Mitchell. Sound production and theme music by Darcy Thompson and Matt Nicholish.